At some point this season, you will apply a Rune of Corruption to an item you spend hours building, and it will come out completely ruined. Not weaker, not changed in some interesting direction, just gone. And the game will not apologize for it, offer you a retry, or give you a way to undo what just happened. And that is a new feeling in Last Epoch. Because this game has always been generous. The crafting system was designed to let you course correct, the monolith let you reroute, the idle grid was always adjustable. You could always go back. Season 4 is the first time EHG looked at that philosophy and deliberately broke it. Not everywhere, not recklessly, but in specific, meaningful places that change how every game session feels. They added a new Omen encounter system that escalates the deeper you push it, a corruption mechanic that is permanent and unpredictable, idols that come pre-built with bonuses and drawbacks you cannot modify, echo chains that commit you to a path before you know exactly where it ends. On paper, that sounds like a patch that would make the game harder. It isn't. What it actually does is make your decisions matter in a way they didn't before. But here's the thing with this season and what this review is actually about. A system that punishes you and a system that gives your choices weight are not the same thing. One of them makes you better at the game, the other just makes you frustrated. And Season 4 is walking that line more carefully than any Last Epoch patch before it, which means it also has more ways to get it wrong. So the question here is not if Shattered Omens is good or bad. The question is whether every bet EHG made here has actually paid off. And the answer is more complicated than the launch week hype suggested. Let's get into it. The pitch from EHG going into this season was that the new systems would be woven into the monolith rather than layered on top of it. That's easy to say in a developer update. It's harder to actually build. They built it. The Omen Windows, echo chains, time glass fragments, Rune of Corruption, idle altars, corrupted items. On paper, these look like 5 separate features. In practice, they form a single interconnected loop, and pulling on any one of them pulls on the others. Here's what a game session looks like now. You're running the monolith. An open window appears on the map. A glowing ring you can choose to step into or route around. You step in. The Omen immediately starts empowering the enemies inside. You are filling a progress bar while managing waves that are actively scaling against you. You clear the bar, the Omen boss becomes killable. You kill it. You walk out with time glass fragments, maybe a Rune of Corruption, maybe an idle altar. That's the first loop. But here's where the design gets interesting. The choices you make after that Omen window are the real game. Do you spend the fragments at Apophis to force a specific echo chain to spawn or get random loot? Do you hold that Rune of Corruption until you get a near perfect base item? Because the moment you corrupt the item is locked forever. No more modifications, no course correcting. Do you slot the idle altar now and reshape your entire idle grid, or wait until you have more context about where your build is going? None of these are passive choices. All of them have permanent consequences. What EHG built with this update is a risk escalation system. Not risk in the you might die sense, though greater Omen Windows will test that too. Risk in the this decision cannot be undone sense. That's the type of tension Last Epoch hasn't really had before, and it changes how you play. Not just what you do, but how carefully you think before doing it. The community complained about the Rune of Corruption in the first week. Players were corrupting items too early, watching good gear become unsalvageable, and calling it unfair. They still kept playing. That's the tell. Frustration that converts to engagement instead of logout is exactly what a risk system is supposed to produce. Now I want to talk about the systems one by one. Omen Windows are the centerpiece, and they earned it. The 5 difficulty tiers scale cleanly from campaign to high corruption. You're not being thrown into the deep end in Chapter 2, but by the time you're pushing empowered monoliths, a greater Omen window running 2 simultaneous bosses is something you prepare for, not stumble into. That is good design range. Echo chains seem to be the quiet MVP of the patch. The monolith web has always had a directionlessness problem. Plenty of good options, but no particular reason to choose one path over the other. Echo chains solve that by giving you a committed sequence of escalating echoes with a shared mechanical theme and a destination at the end. A monolith run now has a shape. You're going somewhere specific, not just browsing. It sounds like a small thing, but it isn't. Worth noting though, Season 2 tried to solve a version of this same problem with woven echoes, player-placed encounters that let you seed specific content into the web manually. That system put the structure in your hands, which was interesting in theory, but required you to already know what you wanted and where. It rewarded players who had a plan going in and quietly ignored everyone else. Echo chains flip that relationship to some degree. The structure comes to you, escalates on its own terms, and the commitment is built into the design rather than imported by the player. Both approaches are trying to answer the same question: how do you give the monolith direction? But the echo chains answer it in a way that works whether or not you've mapped out your monolith runs in advance. Next, corruption crafting is the most divisive addition, and correctly so. The Rune of Corruption is generally powerful, especially when it rolls well, and it can reduce a carefully built piece of gear to something you sell for pocket change. The community seems to have split into two camps: players who find the irreversibility thrilling, and players who find it punishing. Both camps are still logging in, which suggests the balance isn't roughly in the right place, even if the tuning isn't perfect yet. Now, let me talk about the least flashy system and possibly the most impactful long-term: idol altars. Reshaping the idol grid by adding refracted slots that amplify affix effectiveness opens build paths that didn't exist before this patch. If you've been playing Last Epoch long enough to have strong opinions about idol setups, this one lands hard. Tied to the altar system are Omen Idols, which are pre-corrupted idols that drop from Omen encounters with powerful bonuses and deliberate drawbacks baked in, unchangeable after you get them. You take the whole package, or you don't take it at all. Community reaction has been generally mixed in an interesting way. Players who engage with them tend to land in one of two places: either building around the drawback and finding it opens creative space they wouldn't have explored otherwise, or finding the fixed nature too constraining for builds that need precise idol affix combinations. The criticism isn't that Omen Idols are weak. Most of them aren't, actually. It's the inability to modify them that creates an all-or-nothing tension that doesn't always resolve satisfyingly. When the drawback fits your build, they feel like found treasure. When it doesn't, they feel like a system that passed you by. That variance is worth noting before you start chasing them specifically. Now, Vision of the Observer, the new pinnacle boss, which is gated in a way that will frustrate some players and reward focused ones. Getting there requires all three Omen windows active simultaneously and a clean clear of Omen's veil. No deaths, no mistakes. For players pushing 400 plus corruption, this is exactly the kind of prestige target the endgame needed. For everyone else, it's a horizon to work towards. Whether that gate is calibrated right is something the community is still debating, and loudly. Next, Bladestorm and Shadow Rend, the two new rogue skills. Bladestorm was promoted from a subskill of Umber Blades into a full standalone skill with its own tree, which was the correct call, honestly, because any Bladestorm build is super fun to play. Shadow Rend, on the other hand, rewards timing in a way that most Last Epoch skills don't. The movement attack into delayed Shadow Sweep creates a rhythm that practice players will get more out of than players who just want to press buttons fast. Neither skill feels like a seasonal feature. Both feel like they belong into the class permanently. Outside of the seasonal content, EHG did real work on things that affect every player every session. The loot filter cap went from 75 rules to 200, with new condition categories that split crafting materials into separate shards, runes, and glyphs. If you've ever hit that 75 rule limit and had to make compromises on your filter, you know exactly how much this matters. If you haven't, you will. Enemy hit reactions are improved. Combat clarity, specifically whether your hits are registering visibly, is better. Not fixed across the board, but meaningfully better. The Primalist got a full animation overhaul. Running, walking, evading, attacking, skills, idle, all of it. It's the kind of change that sounds like a footnote until you play a Primalist and realize how different the class feels to inhabit. The power fantasy and the animations are finally saying the same thing. Spellblade's ward generation shifted from on-use to on-hit. One line in the patch notes, but this really changes the entire defensive feel of the mastery during leveling. Worth noting if you are a main mage class. Now, with the good stuff out of the way, here's what's not working. Omen visual clarity is a real problem. The Omen windows are designed as an opt-in risk system. You choose to engage, except when you walk into an Omen modified echo without realizing it until you're already inside one. That undermines the entire opt-in premise. The signaling needs to be clearer before you are in the encounter, not during. This ship broken and hasn't been fixed across the 1.4.3 through 1.4.5 patch cycles. Corruption crafting's downside can feel disproportionate. When an item comes out ruined, not weakened, not changed in an interesting direction, just ruined, the outcome needs to feel earned by the risk the player took. Sometimes It does, but sometimes you corrupt a near-perfect item on a fully informed decision and get nothing back but a small selling price. The system is designed to create tension, but it occasionally creates frustration that doesn't convert to engagement. EHG hasn't adjusted it yet, and the community feedback has been consistent enough that it probably will. Now, one thing that bugs me really hard as a Primalist main is that the Druid leveling is effectively dead. The mana sustain nerf on form changes broke the archetype at a mechanical level. This isn't a minor tuning issue. The Druid leveling guide was archived by major guide sites, which is the community's way of signaling use a different Primalist leveling guide and then spec into the Druid. For Druid mains, Season 4 is a hard pivot or a sit out. The pinnacle boss gate is steep. Getting to Vision of the Observer requires a level of preparation and corruption progression that will put it out of reach for a significant portion of the player base before the season ends. Don't get me wrong, a prestige boss should be hard to reach, but enough players should be able to reach it that it becomes a shared conversation between players, not an exclusive one. Right now, the balance is way off. And while on the boss topic, boss variety in the endgame is still thin. Vision of the Observer is a good boss, but Last Epoch needs more of them. And this isn't new criticism, but Season 4 did not move the needle on it too much. Now, who is this Season 4? If you are a returning player who left because the monoliths felt aimless, come back. The specific problem, monoliths with no specific direction, choices with no real weight, is what Season 4 was built to fix to some degree. Echo chains give you structure, Omen Windows give you stakes, corruption crafting gives your decisions permanence. These aren't features around the edges, they're at the center of the season. If you are a current player still deciding whether to engage with the seasonal content or continue farming legacy, I say give it a try. Engage with it. The seasonal systems are where the interesting decisions are this patch. The idle altars alone justify it if you have any existing build you care about optimizing. If you're newer to Last Epoch, Season 4 is a good time to be here. The new crafting tutorial helps with the part of the game that trips most people up. The Omen Windows scale with your progression so you're not overwhelmed early, and the one honest heads up warning I can give you is save your Runes of Corruption. You'll want to use them the moment you get them, but don't. Wait until you understand what you're corrupting and why. Now here's the thing about Season 4 Shattered Omens that took me a while to articulate. Every system in this patch, Omen Windows, Echo Chains, Corruption Crafting, Idle Altars, is about one thing: consequence. Last Epoch has always had strong build depth and genuinely excellent crafting. What it didn't have was a sense that the choices you made in a given game session mattered past that session. You could always go back. You could always adjust. The game was generous in a way that occasionally made it feel low stakes. Season 4 changes that feeling, not by making the game punishing, cause it isn't, but by making certain decisions irreversible. The corruption you apply to your items is permanent. The echo chain you commit to has an end. The Omen window you walk into makes the echo you're already in feel different. Yes, we have problems like the Omen visual clarity that needs fixing, the corruption tuning that will probably get adjusted, and the pinnacle boss gate that is too steep for too many players. But these are problems with the execution of a good idea, not problems with the idea itself. EHG built something different this season, not just more Last Epoch, but a version of Last Epoch where your choices have weight and your game sessions have a different shape than before. That's harder to design than it looks, and they got it mostly right on the first attempt. Now, is Season 4 really worth your time? Yes, it is. The problems are real and worth knowing going in, but the core of what they built is better than the season before.